So the world expert is convinced that the vital inscription is genuine, clearing the name of Willy Pepe. But now, a deeper mystery emerges. According to Harry Falk, the script used for the inscription didn't exist when the Buddha died. And the only comparable urns are from long afterwards, too.
So, Harry, you're confident that this urn contained the remains of the Buddha, but it does not date from the time of the Buddha. It dates from about a century and a half, perhaps after the Buddha. Would you agree with that?
This is absolutely correct, yes.
So how can it be that an urn that claims to have contained the remains of the Buddha was made at least 150 years after he died? The answer to that question lies back in time, around 2,300 years before Pepe made his find, at the time of the Buddha himself. How did an ordinary man of flesh and blood start a world religion? How and where did he die? And how might his remains have ended up in the tomb Pepe found?
These are some delightful paintings of the Buddha, the life of the Buddha, which you see depicted in Janakpuri folk art. And when you look at images like this, it's very hard to remember that this is a real person. But the fact is, the Buddha was a real person of flesh and blood. In fact, we know as much about him as we know about Jesus Christ, or indeed the Prophet Muhammad. He lived in the Gangetic Plains in the 5th century BCE. He was probably born about 500, and he probably died about 410 BCE.
The Buddha was born in Lumbini, not far from Piprawa. He was raised a royal prince, but in his early 30s, he fled the luxury of the palace and witnessed human suffering, old age, illness, and death for the first time. When he saw an old hermit at prayer, he rejected his former life and became a hermit himself. For 6 years, he led a life of extreme denial, earning himself a new name, Sakyamuni, holy man of his own clan, the Sakyas. Then he came to the place that would bring him to enlightenment, Bodh Gaya. When Buddha first came here, it was nothing but trees and jungle. But over the centuries, Bodh Gaya has grown into a great holy site, as sacred as Mecca or Jerusalem.
It's really very humbling to think that this, for millions and millions of Buddhists, this is the center of their universe. And that there are people here from Tibet, from China, from Burma, from Thailand, from Sri Lanka, and indeed foreigners from the West as well. And there's a very real sense of spirituality here, which I find very, very moving. This is the epicenter of the Buddhist faith. And of course, everyone knows of Bodh Gaya, but whoever has heard of Piprawa? And yet it could be hugely significant within the world of Buddhism.
At the heart of this holy site is the Bodhi tree. Meditating here, Buddha finally understood the causes of human suffering and attained enlightenment. And so, a new religion was born. Buddhism. In his footsteps, the pilgrims still walk. 2,500 years later. Here at Bodh Gaya, the Buddha transcended time, entering an eternal present without future or past. For Bhante Pyapala Chakma, a descendant of the Buddha's Sakya clan, it is this eternal present that gives Buddha his power.
When he was born in Lumbini, he was born just ordinary person who sometimes used to live in the past or in the future, not in the present. But after he became enlightened in the Bodhi tree, then he started living exactly at the present moment. But the thing is that the differences between an ordinary person and the person of enlightenment, like a Buddha, that's Buddha lives always at the present moment. Don't live in the past, don't live in the future. But on the other hand, an ordinary person lives either in the past or in the future, not in the present.
At around the age of 80, Buddha set out on his final journey, back to his homeland close to Piprawa. His route was marked, later, by memorial stupas and stone columns, where he delivered his last sermon, where he turned back the crowds and continued with just his close disciples. 60 miles short of Lumbini, at Kushinagar, he lay down between two trees that suddenly flowered out of season, and he died. This huge statue at Kushinagar marks the spot where he experienced what Buddhists call the final extinguishing. But it's what happened after his death that provides the vital clues to locate Buddha's true burial place.
As soon as the Buddha had died, his body was cremated. Now, over the years, he'd gathered a very large following. So there was an almighty squabble because everybody wanted a share of his remains. And this could only be resolved when it was decided that the remains should be divided into 8 portions, which would go to 8 kings, including the Sakya family, the members of his own Sakya clan.
The inscription states that the Piprawa urn contained this precious Sakya family portion. Since Piprawa is at the heart of Sakya territory, Buddha's homeland, was it possible that Pepe had found this original burial site of Buddha's remains? The only one of the 8 portions to be found. Perhaps. But that original burial would have been simple. The bones and ashes laid in the ground with flowers, buried under a mound of earth, nothing like the tomb that Pepe had discovered. So even if the fragments of bone and ash belonged to the Buddha, the elaborate tomb must have been created later by someone else. So who could have built it, and when, and why? There's one place that could hold the answers to these vital questions. A remarkable site at the very heart of India. Sanchi, 450 miles away.
There it is. Very striking. We're sweeping into Sanchi Hill, and there it rises out of the plain. And right on the top is the great stupa with its magnificent carvings, one of the wonders of the world.
With its huge stupa, 50 feet high, Sanchi is a monument to the spread of Buddhism. Could it be that the man who first built this site was also responsible for the spectacular tomb that Pepe found?
The carving here is monumental. It's a miracle, you might say, that it survived 2,000 years plus. And here it is, and it's the only one like it. It's breathtaking.
The monument was begun by a great emperor who converted his Indian empire to Buddhism 150 years after the Buddha died. His name was Ashoka, and his conversion marked a dramatic personal transformation.
It's impossible not to be moved by the character of Ashoka. Here is an extremely violent, unpleasant, ruthless emperor who seizes the throne by violence, kills all his brothers, and then suffers some extraordinary change of heart and is suddenly converted completely, becomes a new man. And from that moment onwards, Asia has a ruler who actually rules by principles of morality. He is the one who changes this minor cult into what is initially a national religion and then a world religion.
Three crucial facts suggest possible connections between Ashoka and Piprawa. Sanchi shows how Ashoka built hundreds of brick stupas all over India. How he dug up the original portions of Buddha's remains and redistributed them to these new sites. Was Piprawa among them? A clue may be found in one of India's earliest languages. Ashoka used a form of Sanskrit to create written edicts, first on rocks, and later on a series of huge sandstone pillars. They were written in script called Brahmi. The very script used to make the Piprawa inscription. That inscription, according to Harry Falk, was made around 150 years after Buddha died, exactly when Ashoka reigned. But if Ashoka did create the tomb at Piprawa, if it did mark the burial site of Buddha's own family, the Sakya clan, it would have been one of Buddhism's holiest sites. How could such a place possibly have been forgotten? The answer to that question lies in what happened to Buddhism after Ashoka died.
Ashoka wanted to transform his kingdom into a Buddhist country, and in a sense that was a step too far.
These statues did not lose their heads by accident. Buddhism challenged the authority of India's Hindu priests, who saw it as a heresy to be suppressed. And what the Hindu priests started, Muslim invaders completed. Over the centuries, Ashoka, the Brahmi script, and Indian Buddhism itself were all erased from memory, almost as if they had never been. It wasn't until the 1800s that Buddhism was all rediscovered, mainly by British scholars. Brahmi was deciphered. Ashoka was identified. So were places like the Sanchi Monument. And Piprawa, among the last sites to be found, was unearthed by Willie Pepe in 1898. All the evidence seems to point toward Ashoka as the man who created this remarkable tomb. For world expert Harry Falk, the huge sarcophagus is the clincher.
So this is 132, little less.
The dimensions of the chest seem to fit the typical measurements of Ashokan artwork.
The looks, the feel, everything smacks of Ashokan perfectionism.
Harry Falk is convinced that the sarcophagus is made of sandstone from the same quarry Ashoka used for his pillars, and that it may even have been made at the same time as the nearby pillar at Lumbini.
So does that mean it's possible to give this stone chest a date?
This should have been done when Ashoka was in Lumbini and in that area. That means around his 20th regnal year, which comes down to 245 BC, roughly.
You've given me a very specific date, Harry. Highly unusual.
Such a precise date is a breakthrough, but vital questions remain. Why did Ashoka choose Piprawa? Was it the original burial place of Buddha's remains by his own Sakya family?
उस खीर को बड़े ही प्रेम से सागर बुद्ध ने खाया और पात उसी ने नदी में फेंक दिया। बुद्ध का धर्म जो है।
If Pepe had dug deeper, as his niece suggested in 1898, he might have found the answer. But many years later, someone else did. It was 1971. The excavator this time was not a British colonial, but a young Indian archaeologist, K.S. Srivastava. His daughter Mridula recalls how it all began.
Actually, when my father started excavation in 1971, we just asked him, with what intentions you are doing this? He said that I want to do something which no one has done, something which will stand in my name.
Srivastava was convinced that the chamber where Pepe had found the sarcophagus wasn't at ground level, and that there might be something beneath it. Pepe's excavation had long since been filled in, so Srivastava had to go down through the whole stupa again, from the top.
Every month, and when he used to come back to the headquarters, my brother, myself and my sister, we used to just keep waiting at the door for him. As soon as he started climbing the stairs, he said, "Papa, did you get anything?" Every time when he used to say that, "No, not this time, not this time," we could see the tension and worry on my father's face. But ultimately in 72, when he got the relic caskets, and he came to Patna and we asked, "Papa, did you get something?" He said, "Oh yes, I have done it."
And he had. Just below Pepe's find, he located an earlier burial. Two small chambers, each with a soapstone casket and some broken redware. Srivastava was convinced that this find was from the time of the Buddha himself. For Charles Allen, it's the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, suggesting that this lower site was the original Sakya burial place, and that Buddha's ashes were moved from here to the elaborate new tomb above, just as the inscription said.
When Pepe comes along and he finds this huge great box, we're talking about a different era. Somebody has come along and disturbed the original ashes, and then he's added his own particular tribute, his offering of all these wonderful jewels. And we know that that person is almost certainly Ashoka, because this great box was Ashokan. The writing, almost certainly added to that inscription, is from the time of Ashoka. I can't tell you how relieved I feel, because when I set out on this journey, I had no idea if we'd come up with real answers, but we have. I'm pretty excited by it, frankly. I can now go back to England and tell Neil Pepe that his grandfather is not a liar, that the inscription is genuine. Not only that, I can say that the jewels that he possesses are indeed genuine. Now, let me show you some pictures from that trip.
I can hardly believe it. It's a fantastic ending.
But Charles Allen has done far more than clear the name of one man. For nearly 400 million Buddhists worldwide, he has confirmed that Piprawa is, in all likelihood, the very place where the Sakyas buried their holy clansmen. and where the Emperor Ashoka later built a magnificent tomb to give honor to the Lord Buddha himself. The Secrets of the Dead investigation continues online. For more in-depth analysis and streaming video of this and other episodes, visit pbs.org. This Secrets of the Dead episode is available on DVD for $24.99 plus shipping. To order, call 1-800-336-1917.